Good evening, friends. Gord's Poetry Show 27, honoring Seamus Heaney, the world-famous Irish poet, Nobel Prize winner, and recent arrival in the afterlife, where I hope he's still at it, if he's not chatting up a storm with Willie Yeats and James Joyce, or Sammy Beckett, or Lady Gregory, or whoever. Maybe Henry Gibson, you never know. A lifetime of writing. I have selected in front of me poems 1966 to 96, and it's 500 pages. And that's only till 1996. Oh, Lord. Some guys just never know when to stop, do they? Death of a Naturalist seems to have been his first trade collection, 1966. Probably right around the time the Beatles were recording Revolver, amongst other things. Digging. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into the gravelly ground. My father, digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boot nestled on the lug, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man in Toner's bog. Once I carried him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the curt cuts of an edge through living roots awaken in my head. But I've no spade to follow men like them. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it. Bushmills. What else? The barn. Threshed corn lay piled like grit of ivory or solid as cement in two lugged sacks. The musky dark hoarded an armory of farmyard implements, harness, plough socks. The floor was mouse grey, smooth, chilly concrete. There were no windows, just two narrow shafts of gilded moats, crossing from air holes slit high in each gable. The one door meant no drafts all summer, when the zinc burned like an oven, a scythe's edge, a clean spade, a pitchfork's prongs. Slowly bright objects formed when you went in. Then you felt cobwebs clogging up your lungs and scuttled fast into the sunlit yard. and into nights when bats were on the wing over the rafters of sleep, where bright eyes stared from piles of grain and corners, fierce, unblinking, the dark gulfed like a roof space. I was chaff to be pecked when the birds shot through the air slits. I lay face down to shun the fear above. The two-lugged sacks moved in like great blind rats. Undine. That's Undine, one of the fairy folk. He slashed the briars, shoveled up grey silt to give me right of way in my own drains, and I ran quick for him, cleaned out my rust. He halted, saw me finally disrobed, running clear with apparent unconcern. Then he walked by me. I rippled and I churned where ditches intersected near the river, until he dug a spade deep in my flank and took me to him. I swallowed his trench gratefully, dispersing myself for love down in his roots, climbing his brassy grain. But once he knew my welcome, I alone could give him subtle increase and reflection. He explored me so completely, each limb lost its cold freedom. Human warmed to him. That and the next couple of poems are from Door into the Dark, all the way back to 1969. Was that when the Beatles were recording Abbey Road? I think so. Anna Horish, my place of clear water, the first hill in the world where springs washed into the shiny grass and darkened cobbles in the bed of the lane. Anna Horish, soft gradient of consonant, vowel meadow, after image of lamps swung through the yards on winter evenings. With pails and barrows those mound dwellers go waist deep in mist to break the light ice at wells and dunghills. Servant boy. He is wintering out the back end of a bad year, swinging a hurricane lamp through some outhouse, a jobber among shadows. Old work whore, slave blood, who stepped fair hills under each bidder's eye, and kept your patience and your counsel, how you draw me into your trail broken from haggard to stable, a straggle of fodder stiffened on snow, comes first footing the back doors of the little barons, resentful and impenitent, carrying the warm eggs. Oracle. Hide in the hollow trunk of the willow tree, its listening familiar, until, as usual, they cuckoo your name across the fields. You can hear them draw the poles of stiles as they approach, calling you out, small mouth and ear in a woody cleft, lobe and larynx of the mossy places. Wedding day. I am afraid. Sound has stopped in the day, and the images reel over and over. Why all those tears? The wild grief on his face outside the taxi. The sap of morning rises in our waving guests. You sing behind the tall cake like a deserted bride who persists demented and goes through the ritual. When I went to the gents, there was a skewered heart and a legend of love. Let me sleep on your breast to the airport. Mother of the groom. What she remembers in his glistening back, in the bath, his small boots in the ring of boots at her feet. Hands in her voided lap, she hears a daughter welcomed. It's as if he kicked when lifted and slipped her soapy hold. Once soap woodies off the wedding ring that's bedded forever now in her clapping hand. From Stations, 1975. That fine amber liquid goes into the mouth that you cannot see. Cloistered. Light was calloused in the leaded panes of the college chapel and shafted into the terrazzo rink of the sanctuary. The duty priest tested his diction against pillar and plaster. We tested our elbows on the hard bevel of the benches, or split the gold-barred thickness of our missals. I could make a book of hours of those 6 years, a Flemish calendar of rite and pastime set on a walled hill. Look! There is a hillside cemetery behind us, and across the river the plough going in a field, and in between the gated town. Here an obedient clerk kissing a bishop's ring. Here a frieze of seasonal games, and here the assiduous illuminator himself, bowed to his desk in a corner. In the study hall my hand was cold as a scribe's in winter. The supervisor rustled past, sibilant, vapouring into his breviary, his welted brogues unexpectedly secular under the soutane. Now I bisected the line A-B, now found my foothold in a main verb in Livy. From my dormer after lights out, I revised the constellations, and in the morning broke the ice on an enamelled water jug with exhilarated self-regard. From North, 1975 also. Big year 75. Punishment. I can feel the tug of the halter at the nape of her neck, the wind on her naked front. It blows her nipples to amber beads. It shakes the frail rigging of her ribs. I can see her drowned body in the bog, the weighing stone, the floating rods and boughs, under which at first she was a barked sapling that is dug up, oak bone brain firkin, her shaved head like a stubble of black corn, her blindfold a soiled bandage, her noose a ring to store the memories of love. Little adulteress, before they punished you, you were flaxen-haired, undernourished, and your tar-black face was beautiful. My poor scapegoat, I almost love you, but would have cast, I know, the stones of silence. I am the artful voyeur of your brains exposed and darkened combs, your muscles webbing and all your numbered bones. I who have stood dumb when your betraying sisters, called in tar, wept by the railings, who would connive in civilized outrage, yet understand the exact and tribal intimate revenge. Strange fruit. Here is the girl's head like an exhumed gourd, oval-faced, prune-skinned, prune stones for teeth. The unswaddled the wet fern of her hair and made an exhibition of its coil. Let the air at her leathery beauty. Pash of tallow, perishable treasure, her broken nose is dark as a turfed clod, her eye-holes blank as pools in the old workings. Diodorus Siculus confessed his gradual ease amongst the likes of this. Murdered, forgotten, nameless, terrible beheaded girl, outstaring axe and beatification, outstaring what had begun to feel like reverence. Time for a little politics, my friends. This is an extract from, I presume, a longer poem called Whatever You Say, Say Nothing. I'm writing this just after an encounter with an English journalist in search of views on the Irish thing. I'm back in winter quarters where bad news is no longer news, where media men and stringers sniff and point, where zoom lenses, recorders and coiled leads litter the hotels. The times are out of joint, but as I incline as much to rosary beads as to the jottings and analyses of politicians and newspaper men who scribbled down the long campaign from gas and protest to gelignite and sten, who proved upon their pulses, escalate, backlash, crackdown, the provisional wing, polarization, and long-standing hate. Yet I live here too. I sing, expertly civil-tongued with civil neighbors on the high wires of first wireless reports, sucking the false taste, the stony flavors of those sanctioned old elaborate retorts. Oh, it's disgraceful, surely, I agree. Where's it going to end? It's getting worse. They're murderers. Internment, understandably. The voice of sanity is getting hoarse. Religion's never mentioned here, of course. You know them by their eyes, and hold your tongue. One side's as bad as the other, never worse. Christ, it's near time that some small leak was sprung in the great dikes the Dutchmen made to dam the dangerous tide that followed Seamus. Yet for all this art and sedentary trade, I am incapable. The famous northern reticence, the tight gag of place and times. Yes, yes, of the wee six I sing, where to be saved you only must save face, and whatever you say nothing. Smoke signals are loudmouth compared with us, maneuverings to find out name and school, subtle discrimination by addresses, with hardly an exception to the rule. That Norman, Ken and Sidney signalled prod, and Seamus, call me Sean, was surefire pape. O land of password, hand grip, wink and nod, of open minds as open as a trap, where tongues lie coiled as under flames lie wicks, where half of us, as in a wooden horse, were cabined and confined like wily Greeks, besieged within the siege, whispering Morse. This morning from a dewy motorway I saw the new camp for the internees. A bomb had left a crater of fresh clay in the roadside, and over in the trees machine gun posts defined a real stockade. There was that white mist you get on a low ground, and it was déjà vu. Some film made of Stalag 17, a bad dream with no sound. Is there a life before death? That's chalked up in Ballymurphy. Competence with pain, coherent miseries, a bite and sup. We hug our little destiny again. Summer 1969. While the constabulary covered the mob, firing into the falls, I was suffering only the bullying sun of Madrid. Each afternoon in the casserole heat of the flat, as I sweated my way through the life of Joyce, stinks from the fish markets rose like the reek off a flax dam. At night on the balcony, gulls of wine, a sense of children in their dark corners, old women in black shawls near open windows, the air a canyon rivering in Spanish. We talked our way home over starlit plains, where patent leather of Guardia Civil gleamed like fish bellies in flax-poisoned waters. Go back, one said, try to touch the people. Another conjured Lorca from his hill. We sat through death counts and bullfight reports on the television. Celebrities arrived from where the real thing still happened. I retreated to the cool of the Prado. Goya's shootings of the 3rd of May covered a wall. The thrown-up arms and spasm of the rebel, the helmeted and knapsacked military, the efficient rake of the fusillade. In the next room, his nightmares, grafted to the palace wall. Dark cyclones, hosting, breaking. Saturn jeweled in the blood of his own children. Gigantic chaos turning his brute hips over the world. Also that home gang where two berserks club each other to death for honor's sake, grieved in a bog and sinking. He painted with his fists and elbows, flourished the stained cape of his heart as history charged. Later, let's see. From Fieldwork, 1979. Ooh, there's a great leap forward. A dream of jealousy. Walking with you and another lady in wooded parkland, the whispering grass ran its fingers through our guessing silence, and the trees opened into a shady, unexpected clearing where we sat down. I think the candor of the light dismayed us. We talked about desire and being jealous, our conversation a loose single gown or the white picnic tablecloth spread out like a book of manners in the wilderness. Show me, I said to our companion, what I have much coveted, your breast's mauve star, and she consented. Oh, neither these verses nor my prudence, love, can heal your wounded stare. Ooh, 343, we're really moving along here. From Seeing Things, 1991. Field of Vision. I remember this woman who sat for years in a wheelchair, looking straight ahead out the window at sycamore trees unleafing and leafing at the far end of the lane. Straight out past the TV in the corner, the stunted, agitated hawthorn bush, the same small calves with their backs to wind and rain, the same acre of ragwort, the same mountain. She was as steadfast as the big window itself. Her brow was clear as the chrome bits of the chair. She never lamented once, and she never carried a spare ounce of emotional weight. Face to face with her was an education of the sort you got across a well-braced gate. One of those lean, clean iron roadside ones between two whitewashed pillars, where you could see deeper into the country than you expected, and discovered that field behind the hedge grew more distinctly strange as you kept standing, focused and drawn in by what barred the way. Focused and drawn in by what barred the way. Here's the postscript from The Spirit Level, 1996. Not that long ago. And sometime make the time to drive out west into County Clare, along the flaggy shore in September or October, when the wind and the light are working off each other, so that the ocean on one side is wild with foam and glitter, and inland among stones the surface of a straight grey lake is lit by the earth lightning of a flock of swans, their feathers ruffed and ruffling, white on white, their fully grown, headstrong-looking heads tucked or cresting or busy under water. Useless to think you'll park and capture it more thoroughly. You are neither here nor there. A hurry through which known and strange things pass, as big soft buffetings come at the car sideways and catch the heart off guard and blow it open. Well, the Nobel Lecture from 1995, lovely little talk called Crediting Poetry. I'll read a little snippet to end. I credit poetry for making this spacewalk possible. I credit immediately because of a line I wrote fairly recently encouraging myself and whoever might be listening to, quote, walk on air against your better judgment. But I credit it ultimately because poetry can make an order as true to the impact of external reality and as sensitive to the inner laws of the poet's being as the ripples that rippled in and rippled out across the water in that scullery bucket 50 years ago. An order where we can at last grow up to that which we stored up as we grew. An order which satisfies all that is appetitive in the intelligence and prehensile in the affections. I credit poetry, in other words, both for being itself and for being a help, for making possible a fluid and restorative relationship between the mind center and its circumference, between the child gazing at the word Stockholm on the face of the radio dial and the man facing the faces that he meets in Stockholm at this most privileged moment. I credit it because credit is due to it in our time and in all time, for its truth to life in every sense of that phrase. I credit you, Seamus Heaney. God bless you, sir, wherever you are.